Hi, everyone. Welcome. Oh, you're hearing my dog in the background. Welcome to Trade Justice's monthly Power Hour. If you're here to learn more about what's behind attempts to rig trade deals on behalf of big tech, you are in the right place. We're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to give folks just a minute to trickle into the Zoom. I want to invite you to introduce yourself in the chat with things like your name, your pronouns, your organization, where you're joining us from. And like I said, we're going to get started in just a second. Welcome to folks that are just joining. If you're here for our March Trade Justice Power Hour on what's behind attempts to rig trade deals on behalf of big tech, you are in the right place. We're going to get started here in just a minute, but I want to give folks a chance to trickle into the Zoom. So please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat, things like your name, your pronouns, an organization that you're from, and where you're joining us from today. We're going to get started here in just a second. All right, so I think I'm going to go ahead and get started. Expect a few other folks to trickle in, but for folks who don't know me, I'm Hillary Hayden. I'm the organizing director at the Trade Justice Education Fund. We are a national organization working to stop the damage of corporate-centered trade deals and promote a positive vision for international trade. These Trade Justice Power Hour calls happen every third Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern, and they cover a wide range of educational topics about trade policy that will be relevant and interesting to activists across the country. Those of you who've been participating in these briefings for a little while have heard us talk a lot about the threats of big tech's digital trade agenda. Really briefly, the big tech sector, companies like Amazon, Google, Facebook, and others have been pushing really hard in recent years to quietly sneak binding rules into trade agreements that would limit government's ability to enact new consumer privacy, data security, AI accountability, workers' rights, and anti-monopoly measures. These companies know that they're facing increased scrutiny from policymakers at home and abroad, and they view trade deals as their best way of preventing new regulations against them. Big tech's agenda went under the radar for a little while, but as activists like you started sounding the alarm, more and more people have recognized what a catastrophe it would be and have started speaking out against it. Nowadays, consumer groups, digital privacy advocates, civil rights groups, unions, faith organizations, small businesses, and even a few family farm groups have spoken out against the dangers of certain digital trade proposals and how those proposals would hurt their constituencies if enacted. Members of Congress and others in government have started to speak out as well. And late last year, the Biden administration took its strongest action on this issue to date when it announced that it was withdrawing U.S. support for Trump-era digital trade proposals at the World Trade Organization, and that it wouldn't advance those proposals in the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, IPEF, either. Spent a lot of time on that last year in these calls. This is a huge victory for people over corporate power, and I want to give a big thanks here to folks whose work made this victory possible. Unfortunately for right now, that victory is also a really tenuous one. Corporate lobby groups representing big tech have pushed back really hard, slamming the Biden administration for not sticking with those Trump-era giveaways. Congressional Republicans have also joined those corporate lobbyists in attacking the Biden administration. And in a move that surprised a lot of people, a small handful of congressional Democrats have also sided with the tech lobbyists and Republicans in bashing the Biden administration on this issue. Among those Democrats, the one speaking out the loudest has been Senator Ron Wyden, chair of the powerful Senate Finance Committee, which oversees U.S. trade policy. A little bit later in today's call, we're going to get into specifics about the ongoing digital trade fight and how folks here can make a difference in it. But first, we're really lucky to be joined today by Andrew Perez. He's the senior politics editor at Rolling Stone magazine, and he's going to give us an overview of his fantastic new expose on Ron Wyden's role in the digital trade debate. His piece is called "This Democrat is Pushing Big Tech's Interest. His Wife Owns Millions in Tech Stock." Andrew, I want to thank you so much for being with us today. Go ahead and tell us about your piece.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate being here today. Thank you for the opportunity. The piece, looks at Ron Wyden's role in pushing the digital trade agenda in Washington, specifically pushing the Biden administration to reverse its position and to have the U.S. trade representative go back to the table and start once again pushing big tech's digital trade policy proposals. The thing we look at in this piece is the fact that Ron Wyden's wife owns a lot of big tech stock, some like anywhere between $1.5 and $3 million in Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, and Google. These companies would all benefit to varying extents from what's being from what has been talked about here. And we talked to a lot of ethics experts about the situation. Quite obviously, we have no idea what has been motivating Senator Wyden. He's clearly always been, an ally to the tech industry. What experts told us is that that this is sort of the exact kind of reason why watchdog groups have been pushing, to limit lawmakers in their families from owning and trading stocks actively, and that they should instead be investing in index funds. This is a situation where Senator Wyden's family is obviously quite wealthy, but the tech stocks do make up a pretty significant chunk of their investments. So that's, sort of the broader piece here. We looked at how, Senator Wyden has been working, potentially hand in hand with some officials at the National Security Council to get the Biden administration to really reverse course, to overrule the U.S. Trade Representative. He's played a very public fight there, public role in that fight. And we wanted to raise these issues so that people might be able to think a little bit more about them. Sorry, Hillary, I can't hear you.
Thank you so much for flagging that. I want to say thank you really quickly, Andrew, for that overview. For anybody who hasn't read Andrew's piece yet in Rolling Stone, I know that we shared it with a lot of folks in this space, but I'm going to share that link in the chat now. One of our most important action items for folks coming out of this call is for everyone to read Andrew's article, and then please share it on Facebook and Twitter. I'm going to put those links also in the chat right now. Sorry, I should have called it X. I know we're all in a transition period figuring that out. So there's Twitter and there's Facebook. Those links are in the chat. You can use them on social media already. For those who want a little bit more guidance, we're going to be including some sample social media messages and that kind of thing within my follow-up email for this call. The reason that we're asking folks to share Andrew's article is really simple. Corporations and politicians are most able to get away with sketchy things when we let them operate in the shadows. Circulating this article is a really good way for us to educate family, friends, and colleagues about the digital trade threat, and also up the pressure on a key decision maker in this fight. There's been a lot of articles about digital trade in recent years, but it's still not exactly front page news. And I can't think of any reporter who's covered this issue as clearly as our guest. So please do share that article when you can. Andrew, I've got a couple questions for you. You've been really gracious with your time. Do you have a couple minutes to take questions?
Of course.
So one question that's coming up is virtually every U.S. senator raises money from corporations. Why are these family investments in the tech sector significant?
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously there is a difference between, campaign money and direct financial interests. It is true that politicians do all take donate, or most politicians take donations from the industries they regulate. Here it's a much more direct financial interest. Wyden's spokesperson told us that that the senator and his wife keep their finances separate, they file taxes separately, and do not discuss their work. I mean, I think to that point, politicians, have sort of long, like their best defense has been like, oh, I put my money into a blind trust. This is not that kind of situation. This is like in a managed account. But even that is probably not terribly useful either, because politicians still kind of know what affects their financial interests. So, I do think it's like there are obvious reasons why watchdog groups have been pushing lawmakers to get out of the stock market, and their families too. And it's something that we've seen like all throughout the pandemic, right? Where like, um, was it Richard Burr had been, accused of, maybe trading on some knowledge about the COVID pandemic. Like that kind of stuff, like really kind of destroys public trust in lawmakers and institutions for good reason. So that's, that I think is the answer there.
That's helpful. Thank you. I know this isn't exactly your area of expertise, but I'm wondering if you think that the senator's financial interest would make him impossible to move on an issue like this.
Yeah, I can't really speculate as to that. Though I will answer the question about how much of the net worth is tied up in this. So the bulk of the Wyden family's assets like are related to Nancy Bass Wyden's the bookstore that has been in her family for a long, long time in New York City, the Strand. So like they are really wealthy. I would say it's, they're worth probably anywhere between like I think 45 and like 50 something million dollars. But the bulk of that is the bookstore, the building that it's located in New York City. So like, but in terms of their actual sort of like investment assets, otherwise this accounts for probably about a fifth of their investment assets.
That's helpful. I got one more question for you, and this is a favorite pick as a question from Trade Justice staff. Folks on our staff love music by Bob Dylan, by Lauryn Hill, by Rage Against the Machine. We're wondering if you have a favorite politically oriented musical act that's a bit more contemporary.
Well, so I do like Rage Against the Machine, and it's funny, I work for Rolling Stone. I'm kind of embarrassed to say like I'm not super with like the current music scene. Like I'm definitely learning a lot all the time, from everyone else and just from reading like our coverage.
That's great. That's great. Appreciate that feedback. I think we're gonna end it there. I'm gonna ask folks to stick around. The call is not over. We're gonna have a little bit more to say on digital trade and our ISDS campaigning. But before we get to that, thank you so much, Andrew, for your time and for your excellent coverage of the digital trade issue. We really, really appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Have a great afternoon. So at this point, I just want to flag how that digital trade victory that so many of you made possible is already being applied in the real world. A few weeks ago, President Biden issued a new executive order that restricts the transfer of people's sensitive personal data, your financial data, your personal health data, your genomic and biometric data, geolocation data, that kind of thing, to certain bad actors overseas. This step is another indication that the era of big tech firms' ability to ship, process, and store people's personal information anywhere they choose without regard for privacy or data security standards is coming to an end. And this would not have been possible if the data transfer guarantees that big tech was pushing for within IPEF and the WTO had been enacted. The ability for a US president to take this kind of action was preserved and protected last fall when the Biden administration withdrew support for those Trump-era digital trade proposals. And I want to say, unlike corporate lobby groups' intentional obfuscation in the debate over cross-border data flows, the president's executive order shows that governments can easily make distinctions between transfers of public versus private information. So we really strongly believe that people everywhere deserve to access this type of public information on media outlets' websites. Wikipedia, for example, social media, other kinds of public sources. The same thing does not hold true, right, for private information, your personal health data, your financial data, your geolocation data. So one of the things that's at stake in this digital trade debate has been our ability to eventually ensure that privacy takes priority over corporations' desire to profit off of our families' data, free from common sense restraints. Making sure that our digital trade victory is firmed up and defended is key to continuing down the right path on all of this. So there's a massive assault underway on President Biden, and in particular, the U.S. Trade Representative Katherine Tai, for siding with the public instead of with big tech interests on digital trade. And each of you are among a relatively small group of Americans that are educated enough to push back. Most people don't like big tech, but a lot of folks aren't educated enough yet on big tech's digital trade agenda to really speak out about the issue. So we do need to share Andrew's Rolling Stone piece on social media. That's something easy that everybody across the country can do today. And if you're not on social media, that's fine. You can email the article to folks that you think should read it or share it on listservs, that kind of thing. The important thing here is just spreading the word about the issue. Beyond that, for those of you in Oregon or who have friends or colleagues in Oregon, we do need your help with Senator Wyden. To his credit, he has stuck by his early career promise to hold a town hall in each county of the state each year. He's moving through his 2024 town hall schedule right now, and we need people to go ask him about his digital trade position, and in particular, why he's siding with big tech on this issue against the president, labor groups, civil society, and his own constituents. If you live in Oregon, I'm going to drop my email in the chat in just a second. Please reach out and let me know where you're at so that I can keep you on my growing list of folks in Oregon that can help get this issue in front of the senator. I'm going to drop that in the chat right now. There we go. So we've singled out Senator Wyden today because he's the highest ranking senator on this issue. But Representative Del Bene in Washington State has been another real problem. She's consistently sided with big tech on this issue, also against her constituents. So if you are in Del Bene's district, please reach out to me as well at that email address that I dropped in the chat. I will share your email with our friend Julie Buwana at the Washington Fair Trade Coalition, and she'll get back in touch with you. Representative Del Bene is the ringleader of a group of representatives in Washington State that are also bad on this issue. So if you're in Representative Larson's district or Schreier's district or Strickland's district, I'd also love to hear from you as well. And we'll be sure to get you connected to Julie. I want to take a peek quickly at California. So there's a lot of strong leaders on this issue in California, but there are a few bad ones too. If you're in the districts of Representatives Panetta, Barra, Correa, Peters, or Swalwell, please also drop me an email with what district you're in, and I'm going to be sharing it with Will Wilchko at the California Trade Justice Coalition. He will get in touch about opportunities to get this issue in front of those folks. There are a few others around the country, but honestly, Senator Wyden in Oregon and Representative Del Bene in Washington, and then Representative LaHood from Illinois on the Republican side are big tech's biggest mouthpiece on this particular issue. And if you're one of their constituents, you can play an outsized role in the digital trade struggle and conversation right now. So please reach out, let me know if you're in one of those districts, and I will be sure to get in touch with you and get you in touch with the right people to get in front of those Congress people on this issue. For the rest of us, we have an important role to play by dragging big tech's agenda out of the shadows. And our best way of doing that for this month is just sharing Andrew's article as wide as you can. So I want to thank folks again for all the work that you've done on this issue. I think that we've come such a long way. I wanted to address quickly just a comment about Senator Wyden. Senator Wyden's positions on certain data and privacy things have been good. But it's just awkward because it seems like he's pushing a really good domestic agenda on specific things, not on everything, but on some specific things. But then he's doing things in the international space that kind of would undo those actions. And so it's unclear if he doesn't know that he's doing that or if there's something else underneath what's going on. But I just wanted to address that comment that I saw in the chat. I want to transition quickly to a conversation about Ruby River. Last month, we spent our whole activist call on investor-state dispute settlement and a specific case, Ruby River Capital, a company that had permits to put an LNG facility at the mouth of the St. Lawrence River in Canada. And when their permits got canceled, they used an arbitration system, investor-state dispute settlement through NAFTA, to try to get $20 billion for their investment in that project. I'll note quickly that this is one of the last cases that will ever happen between the US and Canada through that system, because activists like you helped get ISDS between the two countries removed during the USMCA fight. On April 11, groups across the United States and Canada are coming together for an International Day of Action targeting Ruby River and asking them to drop their ISDS case. In Canada, there's an action happening in Montreal. In the US, there will be actions happening in Delaware, in Texas, and in California, which I think is going to be really fun. Will, do you want to talk about what you're planning in California?
Absolutely. Thanks, Hillary. So we're going to be planning an action outside the Ruby River's owners' offices in Sunnyvale, California, on the 11th of April at 10:30 a.m. I just want to highlight the fact that we've had tremendous victories on this front against ISDS, but the fact that some of these lawsuits still exist, the fact that countries can be extorted into building pipelines, into standing against what the people in those countries actually want is unacceptable. And so we really want to see people out there in California. We want to see folks out there in Delaware, in Montreal, in Texas, and really send a strong message to Ruby River that it is not acceptable. They're not going to get away with this, and that when they do stuff like this, people will stand up and fight back. And so I really hope to see you all out there on the 11th. If you're close to one of these locations, links are being propagated in the chat right now. But it's really critical to know that your activism over the years has led us to this point where there's only just a few of these lawsuits left that are happening right now between the United States and Canada, and we really need to kind of get out there and send a strong message. So with that, thank you very much, Hillary, and thank you all for all of your continued work.
Thank you so much, Will. I had the chance to chat with some of the Canadian partners in this last week, and they're really excited. They're getting ready to go to the location of the Ruby River office with little hard hats and shovels to be like digging for the truth in the ISDS case and this kind of thing. I think it's going to be really fun. A really good opportunity to do some international work as well. So like Will said, those links are in the chat. Please let me know if you can be at the Delaware action that is being spearheaded by our friends at Global Trade Watch. So I'll be sure to connect you with folks there. If you don't live in any of those places, you'll recall that we asked last month for help with two different letters. The first was a Dear Colleague letter asking members of Congress to sign that they support ending ISDS within CAFTA. And I want to thank everyone who reached out to their member of Congress on that. It is going to be coming out in the next couple of days, and it has a fantastic list of signers from across the country, including several very powerful committee members and committee chairs. I think it's going to make a huge difference pushing the Biden administration on the issue. So just wanted to thank folks for that. We also asked for help on a letter aimed at getting state legislators across the country to start speaking out about the issue. And I'm glad to say there's been a lot of progress on that letter in the last month, but we're hoping to get a few more state legislators on. So I'm going to have, yep, perfect. Thank you, Clayton. That link should be in the chat now. Please send your state legislator a note asking them to sign. I think there's a lot going on this issue right now. Between the International Day of Action, the congressional letter, the state legislators letter, we have a really good opportunity to convey our message and have this message heard that we want ISDS out of our trade deals. So please take a second to send that note. The link is in the chat. I want to make sure that we don't. Okay, perfect. So the last thing that I wanted to spend a little time on, so in January, our Trade Justice Power Hour really focused on trade rhetoric and the way that trade rhetoric is used to divide people up, and what we can do about that in a year when we're probably all going to be hearing a lot of rhetoric. We heard in the January Power Hour from the Latin America Working Group Director on the impacts of trade deals in Latin America. We heard from the Communications Workers of America about amazing cross-border solidarity work in the Philippines. And then we heard from the California Trade Justice Coalition about how this rhetoric has led to an increase in hate crimes against Asian Americans. I wanted to share here that we have a resource you can use now to talk about this in your community. Will, do you want to share your screen quickly so folks can see that while I'm talking about it? Awesome. So this is a palm card And it covers a lot of the topics that we covered in that January Power Hour. It's meant to be a way for people to calibrate their trade BS detector. And it has a little blurb about trade and then some of those key divisive, maybe nationalist messages and how we might counter some of those messages. So there is a downloadable version of this on the website, and we're going to share a link to that in just a second. I also wanted to share that I have a limited number of printed copies of this palm card. So if you are interested in having some shipped to you, please reach out to me over email. Let me know how many you think you need and where and when you think you're going to use them. And based on the number of folks that send me that message, I will get back in touch with folks that I think we can get some out to. So I think thank you all for sharing. I think those are all of my updates. Those are all of my updates. I really hope that folks will use that palm card, and please be in touch with me about the stuff that's going on with Senator Wyden and other members of Congress that we mentioned earlier. I think we have a real opportunity on some of these issues to make progress. So I just want to thank everyone for attending. I hope you have a great week, and we'll be in touch via a follow-up email with some more information about each of these actions. Thanks, everyone.